Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. We're going to go back to the phones here in just a second, 888-589-8840. But just to close the loop on what we were talking about, you know, the alarming thing right now is you have the same pathologies that destroyed the black family are now destroying the white family. Bill O'Reilly was exactly right. The problem that destroyed the black family was welfare. It told males that they were irrelevant. They weren't needed, either as husbands or fathers. If you're not around, the government will step in. The government will be their daddy. The government will be your woman's husband, so you don't worry about it. You go off and do your thing, and the government will step in and take your place. That's the message that was sent to the black community. And young black women, they can do math just like anybody else. I mean, there are tables. I've looked at them. You can actually go to the federal website, and you can see how much money you will get per month for every additional child. It's just right there in black and white. They can do math. More kids, more money from the government, and on the condition that they do not marry the father. That's the only way they can qualify for that extra money from the government is if they don't marry the father of their children. This has absolutely devastated the black community. And now what the Associated Press is reporting is those same dynamics, those same pathologies now are infiltrating the white community. So this is not about race. Let's not make this about race. This is about government creating public policy that appeals to weaknesses in our human nature. And the federal government, the least thing it ought to do, the minimum it ought to do is not enable, not be complicit in encouraging its own citizens to do things that are self-destructive. That ought to be the minimum thing that government does, is don't make things worse than they already are. But the Associated Press points out marriage rates are in decline across all races. The number of white mother-headed households living in poverty has risen to the level of black ones. So it doesn't matter whether you're black or white. Poverty, welfare becomes addictive. It traps white women. It traps black women in a cycle of poverty, and their kids are the ones that pay the ultimate price. William Julius Wilson, a Harvard professor, specializes in race and poverty. It's time that America comes to understand that many of the nation's biggest disparities are increasingly due to economic class position. And the context here is a lot of this is due to family structure in both the black and white communities. And here's the interesting thing that the AP says. While poverty rates for blacks and Hispanics are nearly 3 times higher, by absolute numbers, the predominant face of the poor is white. So the rates are higher, 3 times as high in the black community and in the Hispanic community. Rate of poverty is 3 times higher. But remember, blacks are about 12, 13% of the population. Hispanics, I know, about the same, 12, 13%. So white's still the majority of the population. So the total number of the poor is found, the majority of the poor people in America are white. More than 19 million whites fall below the poverty line of $23,021 for a family of 4, accounting for more than 41% of the nation's destitute, nearly double the number of poor blacks. So that's the alarming thing. The same pathologies that destroyed the black community are now working their black magic against the white community. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's start with Fred in Mercer, West Virginia. We can bring Fred to Mercer, West Virginia. Okay, we haven't.
I'm not in Mercer. I'm in Mercer County.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. I'm sorry, Fred. My call screener software is acting up on me. I didn't realize you were on. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I've got 3 points I'd like to put before you, things that you can mull over and discuss in the future as well. You're talking about the excuse me, unisex uniforms and how it's going to necessitate lowering standards. You've heard of the Janissaries in the Ottoman Empire?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on them, but I've heard of them.
Okay, they were an elite troop of Christian Turks. They were very fierce fighters, and for that, they became very elite. So it became fashionable for the rich people to want to get into it, so they bought their way in, and of course that lowered the standards, and that was the end of the Janissaries. And another point is this idea of tradition. The homosexual community disdains tradition. It's traditional to have a one-man, one-woman marriage. They disdain that. But they don't disdain marriage. They want to have a marriage. That's traditional.
Yeah, but you're talking about the fact that they want to normalize same-sex marriages?
Yeah, they want to have a same-sex marriage.
Yeah. So what we're saying is kind of ironic that they have spent a good part of the last several decades disparaging the entire institution of marriage,
yes,
criticizing it, having nothing but contempt for it, and now all of a sudden that's become the holy grail to them.
And the third point I'd like to make is at the border. The Chula Vista section, called the sector, here in Southern California, is the busiest illegal immigration point in the country. But it's not all Mexicans, and it's not all Latin Americans. There are Chinese, there are Arabs, there are Germans, there are Poles coming across at the border there.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, Fred, is that Iran is really bulking up its presence in South and Central America, and jihadist camps are in full operation in Central America, and part of the reason is they can migrate these trained jihadis north through Mexico and in to the United States. So a porous southern border has become a way then for jihadis, for Muslims who are intent on killing us, to come across the border and infiltrate the United States. So it is a serious problem. And Iran is really bulking up. A lot of people think, well, Iran's over there in the Middle East. We don't have to really worry about them until they get nuclear missiles. But they are doing jihadi training in South and particularly in Central America, partly for the desire to radicalize those nations and those regimes, but also to train Muslims who can infiltrate the United States. Well, listen, I appreciate that, Fred. Thanks for the call. And Steve King is still under fire from even people in his own party who are slamming him. You got to move now to try to get him to be dumped from the House Judiciary Committee. And trust me, he's not going anywhere. Steve King was on this program on Friday. And what King pointed out in response is this blizzard of criticism that's come his way. And I didn't know this until I read this. This is a piece in The Hill that according to Steve King, there are 25,064 criminal aliens, that is, they are illegal aliens, that are incarcerated in America today for homicide. I want to repeat that. You have over 25,000 illegal aliens right now that are incarcerated. They're in jail or they are in prison right now for homicide. Now, what does that mean? That means that there are 25,000 people that would be alive today if we had a secure southern border. So in other words, this is not just an issue of fairness. It's not just an issue of cultural value, not just an issue of cultural unity. It is now a pro-life issue. We read stories every day of Americans who lose their lives to illegal aliens who are driving drunk, who are committing homicide. So it's a pro-life issue along with everything else. Focal Point AFR Talk. Be right back.